Welcome to Jacksonville Inside and Out. We're here with City Council candidate Ramon Day. He's running in District 4. Welcome back to Jacksonville Inside and Out. We're here with City Council candidate Ramon Day. Now you're in District 4, you're running in District 4.
That's correct. It's a brand new district. It's been created out of reapportionment in 2011. Essentially, it's everything between Atlantic Boulevard and Butler Boulevard, east of University I-95, out to Town Center on the southeast corner, and up to South Campus of FSCJ on the northeast corner.
Okay. Now, this is since the redistricting, so the fair districts thing, this district used to be part of other districts, I'm guessing.
Some of the district was in the current 4, part of it was in the current 2, and so as a result of the redistricting, it's been completely reconfigured. And every 10 years, the city charter requires that the Jacksonville City Council be reapportioned just like the state legislature or the federal Congress.
Right, based on population, I would guess.
Yes, everything is done to conform to population. We have 14 city council districts, and they all have to meet the population requirements. And then we have 5 at-large city council members who run throughout the entire city, from Beaches to Baldwin, and from Ocean Way to Ortega, and Marietta to Mandarin.
Gotcha. All right, so what's your background here in Jacksonville?
I'm a 5th-generation Floridian, having been born over in Madison County, Florida, but raised here in Jacksonville. Public schools, graduated from Terry Parker, continued my education at Jacksonville University. I majored in history, minored in English. I worked for 3 years and then entered the University of Florida Graduate School of Business, where I earned an MBA in 1981, an MBA degree in finance. Came home to Jacksonville and started my private sector corporate career in commercial banking. Most of my career was in the banking sector. I took a break from 1986 to 88 and was chief of staff to Congressman Charles Bennett, our longtime U.S. representative, represented Jacksonville in the U.S. House for 44 years. And then in 1988, I came home and resumed my banking career, and through the iterations of the corporate world, ended up in mortgage lending, commercial real estate, and now I'm in the insurance industry with Allstate.
Okay. And you're running for city council in District 4. What do you want to do for District 4 specifically for those voters? Well,
a lot of the citywide issues also relate right back to the district. For instance, my #1 priority is restoring the cuts to police and fire. We are down over 100 and something positions in the police and fire departments. If we restore those positions, District 4 benefits. We have safer neighborhoods.
Really, every district.
Every district. So everybody will benefit from that. The same thing on infrastructure. If you recall what happened recently down on Liberty Street with the collapse of that part of Liberty Street into the St. Johns River. Well, infrastructure impacts every neighborhood. And we have parts of District 4 along the Belfort, Bowden Road, Gate Parkway area near St. Vincent's South Side that are just absolute nightmares during rush hour.
Right.
So we address infrastructure issues on a citywide basis. We also help the neighborhoods. And then third, which again will impact the city but also benefit the district, is I want to bring a fiscally conservative approach to managing city finances. I come from the corporate world. I have an MBA in finance. I understand the financial aspect of the operations of city government. And I think that my unique background of having a corporate career as the base of my career experience, along with my term as chief of staff to Charles Bennett, gives me a unique qualification not possessed by any other candidates in this race.
Okay. Now, back on finance, A lot of the problems, at least in my opinion, that we've had with having to lay off firefighters and policemen goes back to some of the money that we end up spending on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the way I look at that is that they're a business, but anytime they have an expense, they come to the city to help subsidize that, but they still manage to make a huge profit with the profit sharing with the NFL.
Sure. The cuts in police and fire were driven primarily by the decline in our property tax base. In 2008 to 2010, as the economic downturn occurred, we lost literally millions of dollars in tax revenue. That's what drove the actual cuts into the police and fire positions. The revenue sharing agreement with the Jaguars is a contractual agreement that was put in place when the team arrived. One of the recent issues had to do with some of the stadium improvements, the jumbo billboards, the scoreboards, the luxury seating, the end zone swimming pools. And those were funded out of a specific revenue source called the bed tax. And those can only be used for certain purposes. One of those purposes is for stadium improvements. So the revenue thing between the Jaguars and the city, that's contractual. The improvements to the stadium are, again, dedicated funding only to be used for the stadium, the arena, and the baseball grounds. So that's where that money came from.
Okay. So how do you end up getting that money back into, if it's a property tax issue, how do we get that money back into our police department and into our fire department?
Okay. Well, my proposal is to take the same approach that we would do in the private sector. First thing is you focus on your costs. How much does it really cost to operate our city? A solution to that is we would do what is called an operational audit. You bring in an outside team of experts, and they actually go in and analyze city government operations, comparing it to peer cities of our size and structure, and determining, what is the best management approach to run city government. What are the best practices that are utilized elsewhere? For instance, in some cities, like San Antonio, Texas, they took a different approach in how they handle the mentally ill in jails. They cut their expense by over $10 million a year, still delivering high quality services.
Well, Utah did a very similar thing. They actually put the homeless in actual homes. They're very small homes, but they reduced their homeless population by 80 some odd percent, or maybe 74. It was a very high number that they reduced it by, and they ended up saving money because they weren't paying for these hospital bills. They weren't paying for to put them in jail, which was a constant thing, and that's a constant thing here in Jacksonville.
It's a very expensive way of taking care of mentally ill.
All right. Now, we'll be right back with more Jacksonville Inside and Out in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Jacksonville Inside and Out. We're here with City Council candidate Ramon Day. Ramon Day, we were talking about homelessness here in Jacksonville.
Yes.
Now, what do you think is the best approach to dealing with that homeless issue?
Well, number one, you can't ignore it. We have a homeless problem, and we have to realize that we have a homeless problem and address it. We have the Sulzbacher Center, which is a very wide range of housing plus services, support services, medical care, training how to interview for a job, assisting people with doing resumes, things that people would need to get back and recover and become into a contributing role in society and become self-sustaining. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, stop using the criminal justice system as a treatment facility for people who have, chronic homelessness issues, perhaps driven by mental illness. And we alluded to earlier, looking at some innovative approaches that were used in Texas and some other places on addressing homelessness and mental illness related issues. So it has to be a comprehensive approach, it has to be holistic, and above all, it has to be humane and sensitive.
Right. Well, a lot could be done, especially if we had a good mental health care system in this country, but specifically here in Jacksonville, if we had a good mental health care system, we may not have people becoming homeless in the first place. Some of these people who end up homeless may actually not fall through the cracks so easily.
A lot of our mental illness programming, which is funded by the state, but it's actually delivered through nonprofit organizations. So one of the critical components of this approach would be the local city government, driven hopefully by the city council, to work with our legislative delegation in Tallahassee and to the degree necessary at the federal level to make sure we have programs that are adequately funded to support the nonprofits that deliver the services. So it's a team approach, and I think that if we take that approach, and it's not a partisan issue. This doesn't have a partisan flavor to it. This is basic human services for people in need, and it should not be given any sort of a political or partisan ideology.
Okay, now another component of that are homeless veterans. I was a homeless veteran for a while. The VA and the Jacksonville Housing Authority helped me get out of that situation after a few years. But one of the problems that I see with our veteran population is before I became homeless, it was almost impossible to get into the VA system just because of the paperwork, and it was a lot of shuffling around. And if it's not an emergency, there's really no one there that's all that interested in helping you. And the second thing is, like right now I have VA healthcare, but I can't go get surgery because I don't have transportation to Lake City where the surgery would take place. Right now we have VA hospital in Gainesville and Lake City, but not here in Jacksonville. We have 2 clinics here in Jacksonville. We have nowhere for comprehensive health care in general. How would the city council go about changing that? Is that something that you have to bring somebody like Andrew Crenshaw and Kareem Brown together and say, this is something our district needs?
Yes, that's exactly right. The city's approach would be making sure that we have adequately staffed Military and Veterans Affairs Department. That's where our veteran service officers are located. They are city employees. If we're not adequately staffed, I will introduce legislation to increase funding and make sure they are adequately staffed, because they're the ones that are able to sit down with a veteran and walk them through all that paperwork to make sure that they can get into the system. And once they're placed into the system, then we have to work with our U.S. representatives, Andrew Crenshaw and Kareem Brown, to make sure that the funding is in place to get the treatment. Now, as to the hospital, I think that we would start by passing a resolution by the City Council in support of the Department of Veterans Affairs locating a VA hospital in Jacksonville. You could look at possibly putting it downtown in conjunction with Shands, University of Florida, health care at Shands Hospital. You could put it over here on the south side. You have St. Vincent's South Side and Memorial Hospital.
Now, did I hear right that NAS Jax is talking about moving to Cecil Field?
That I had not heard.
Okay.
I know there's a very large hospital, naval hospital, on base at Naval Air Station, Jacksonville. What would drive the economics of that and moving out of an existing facility into a new facility, I'm not privy to that, but I think we would take that under advisement. But there's really, if that were to happen, then maybe the facility at NAS Jax becomes our VA hospital.
Okay. Now there's a lot of buildings downtown, and I had asked one of the mayor candidates about this. With a lot of that empty building a lot of the empty buildings downtown, a lot of the development needs of downtown, where do you start with that?
Well, first thing is making sure that there's infrastructure in place to support private investment. Second thing is putting forward a set of incentive packages for private developers to come in and fill the need. The Downtown Investment Authority has taken a new approach. They're looking to build up the demand for housing or retail downtown. If you build up the demand for housing, the apartments will be converted, the condominiums will be constructed. And in some places, single-family homes can be built, or places like Springfield can be revitalized. But demand will drive the supply. Then you will have, once you have the critical mass of residential development, then you can see some retail begin. We have Winn-Dixie. If with some more critical mass of residential, perhaps Publix will put a store downtown, or Trader Joe's, or one of the other more progressively oriented retail grocery store chains could consider coming into downtown. And then you would see, with you have the critical mass of residents, then it might make sense for people to begin relocating their offices downtown, to tap into that talent pool that exists in downtown.
I think part of it is if you show investors that you're willing to deal with the homeless problem without just trying to move them away from downtown, which is ridiculous considering all the services are downtown. Sure. But without moving them away, just kind of dealing with that and taking that issue seriously and helping those people get into housing, I think that goes a long way towards making downtown look more attractive to investors.
Yes, I think that's well said, and I think there's a lot of merit to that. I believe that if we take a comprehensive approach, we can begin to solve some of these problems. Jacksonville has so much potential. Our weather is great. We've got an excellent geographic location with the port, the ocean, our proximity to the interstate highway system, the rail network. This city should not be challenged economically. It should be a booming city with a high quality of life and services and a cultural climate that's vibrant and dynamic and making people want to move to Jacksonville.
And there's a growing film industry as well.
That's right.
We'll be right back with more of Jacksonville Inside and Out. Welcome back to Jacksonville Inside and Out. We're here with City Council candidate Ramon Day. Now changing gears, I'd like to talk a little bit about the HRO. Do you support a more comprehensive, inclusive human rights ordinance that covers the transgender community?
Yes.
Okay.
Clearly. Early on, I came out strongly in support of this issue, and here's the reason why. If you really believe in equality and that no one should be the victim of discrimination, then you have to accept, in my opinion, a fully inclusive human rights ordinance. If you really believe in liberty and justice for all, you really believe in a fully inclusive human rights ordinance. If you start carving people out for any reason, you include sexual orientation, but you omit gender expression or gender identity, all you've done is perpetuate discrimination. So early on, I came out as one of the straight allies in support of a fully inclusive human rights ordinance. What happened in 2012 is the fully inclusive version was introduced to the City Council, drew very little support. Councilman Warren Jones, who was the primary sponsor, came in, made some adjustments. They created what was called the substitute version, which carved out the exclusions for gender identity and gender expression. And they made some modifications into the process of how you would file complaints and things of that nature. So that is the measure that failed by one vote. Well, in hindsight, maybe that was a good thing because now we have a chance to come back and revisit this issue. And I tell you that there are people who didn't support even the substitute last time who have now said that they will vote for a fully inclusive version. Attitudes on sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression have changed dramatically in the last 4 years. I think our city is ready to embrace those changes in attitudes. So I am committed. That would be the first bill that I will introduce if I'm elected to City Council the day after I take office. That would be the first bill that I introduce. It's the right thing to do. It's sound economic sense in terms of a business development tool and recruiting new businesses in Jacksonville. I work for Allstate. We are one of the most progressive companies that embrace inclusive diversity. And those are the kind of businesses we bring into Jacksonville. We can grow our economic base. We bring in talented people, multidimensional individuals, bringing their talents into the city. And we grow and benefit, and the overall quality of life, I think, is enhanced. But fundamentally, it's a matter of delivering equality. President George Washington once said on a different issue, but I think the spirit can be applied, that bigotry shall have no quarter, nor prejudice no sanction. That's the position of the United States government, that all people should be treated equally. And I think we need to bring that same level of commitment of President George Washington to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I find it an interesting thing because you would think that the 14th Amendment just covers this. But we've had to go back, like in the 60s, we had to go back and we had to say, wait a minute. When the 14th Amendment, when it says people and citizens, that means black people too. And now we're having to go back again and go, when we say people and citizens, this means everybody, not just,
Correct.
So,
So I've taken that very strong position, and I tell you, people who even are very conservative, they share my sentiments, and people from the religious community, they go, you're right. We're all children of God. If you want to acknowledge that fact, then we should do that with a fully inclusive human rights ordinance.
right. Now, as for gay marriage, that's legal now here in Florida.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
But we have a problem brewing, sort of, with the clerk of the court.
We have a big problem with the clerk of the court. The clerk of the court has promoted a policy of exclusion and has extended that exclusion now for all people. No one can be married in the Duval County Courthouse. We need to have marriages performed for all people for whom it is legal to be married in the courthouse. If the clerk continues to refuse, one of the second pieces of legislation that I introduce will be to create a space in City Hall, which City Council controls, and if necessary, we will add a position to fund someone under the Human Rights Commission who will do nothing more than perform wedding ceremonies to anyone who wants to be married in City Hall.
Now, how does the clerk of the court get away with this? Is it technically just not part of his job, or is it just?
Legally, it's not required. It would be a service of convenience that clerks of the court in state of Florida have provided historically. It's not required by the constitutional mandate of the clerk of the court being a constitutional officer. It's not mandated by the judicial system. It was something that grew up organically over time. And now this clerk and some other clerks have turned their backs on the legitimate rights of our citizens.
Okay, so this is something that voters really have to in the end, the voters are going to have to deal with it.
They're the ones that suffer the consequences for his actions. And so the workaround on this is that we simply have city government to perform that service. It just needs to be someone who's a notary, and they're legally able to perform a wedding ceremony. So my position is, let's hire someone, fund the position, make them a notary, and we can perform marriages to anyone, not just straight, not gay or lesbian, anyone who wants to get married. Because for many people, this is a matter of financial burden. Not everybody can go out and afford to have a big wedding and reception, etc. But they can afford to simply pay the money for the marriage license, walk into a public building, and be warmly embraced and celebrate their day of happiness for anybody.
I was married in the courthouse myself years ago, which always led to that old Groucho Marx joke. I was married by a judge. I should have asked for a jury, but which in my case, that's very true. But
I think we just need to embrace this issue and move forward, and let's get on to the other things that we have to face in the city.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank
Christian,
you for sharing
my
your
pleasure.
thoughts.
I've enjoyed it very much, and I just encourage everyone to go vote. Early voting will start March the 9th.
March the 9th. See, I didn't even know that they were doing the early voting. I was all geared up to go out on was it the 25th?
24th, Tuesday, March 24th is election day.
March 24th is okay, so the 24th is election day. And March 9th, you can start voting. Go out there, find out who your district candidate is, find out who they are, what they're about, and go vote.
And I hope that on election day, you will vote Raymond Day, City Council, District 4.
Thank you for watching Jacksonville Inside and Out.